everyone. Welcome to the Money Maverick podcast, where we expose the fallacies of traditional financial advice. It's the show that Wall Street doesn't want you to listen to. I'm Tim Turley, the host for today's episode. We have another great guest today from Memphis, Tennessee, who is a living testimonial on how to create wealth by practicing true financial principles in his business. But before we get into that, I wanted to let you know, as always, how you can learn more about the truth, about money, and some of the things we talk about on the show. Simply go to www.uniqueadvantage.biz, and you can read all about our team and how we help people, or you can call us toll free at 888-881-4445. Well, folks, it's rare in today's world to find someone who has the patience to, quote unquote, get rich slow, and by following correct principles and managing money in a very positive and patient way and correct way. And I had the distinct privilege and honor, while being an exhibitor at the National Dental Association a couple of weeks ago, with the National Dental Association, like I told you, in Las Vegas, Nevada. It was 116 degrees, but we were inside most of the time. And I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Roderick Miller. And he stopped by our booth and we were just chatting, and he was very open. And it became very clear very quickly that Dr. Miller was living proof of doing a lot of wonderful things the right way. And he's a great example, not only to other peers in the dental field, but up and coming dentists and students that are coming up. And what he's going to talk about today, I guarantee that there are principles that apply to everybody, no matter who we are or what field we have or where we live. It doesn't matter. Principles are true wherever we go. So let me give a little background before we bring Dr. Miller on. He was born in Memphis, Tennessee. I had the privilege of being there twice. Some of the best food I've ever had, Memphis, Tennessee. He attended all of his schooling right there in Memphis. He started out at Tennessee State, finished up his dental school at the University of Tennessee College of Dentistry, and he did his residency, which you have to tell me about, Dr. Miller, in a second, why you did it in the Bronx, New York, but we'll talk about that in a second. And he's had a private practice, first as an associate, and then as the owner of the Miller Dental Health Facility Clinic from 2004 as ongoing. And he just has such a great story. So Dr. Roderick Miller, welcome to the Money Maverick.
Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you so much for having me. It is truly a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad I met you guys. I'm glad I stopped. You got my glasses cleaned there at your booth. But this is a great honor. My first time doing a podcast, but not my first time talking about finances and business principles, and just day-to-day types of things that I think we as the average Americans, people should do.
It's going to be great. Before we get into it, okay, so tell me, going from Memphis to the Bronx to do your residency is not something you had. Everyone's probably asking, okay, where did that come from? So tell us about the residency in the Bronx.
Okay, that's a good question. Good place to start. So I born and bred in Memphis, did my education there in Memphis, and I did college in Nashville, which is two hours up the road, and went back to Memphis to do dental school. And I said, you know what? Enough of Tennessee for right now. I need to do something different. So I applied to residencies, but I only applied in New York. I said, I'm going to go as far away as possible just to experience something different. And so that's how I ended up in New York, and I applied to 5 schools up there, and I got into one in the Bronx. So, and that was a great experience of culture, people, food, diversity. And I think that every young person should go to New York and experience at least a year there.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've been there several times. You're right. It is quite the place.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. When we were talking in Las Vegas, you had mentioned some things that were really fascinating to me. And again, we're hoping business owners, fellow doctors, dentists specifically, and you're a pediatric dentist as well. So it
Correct.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a pediatric dentist or an orthodontist or a quote unquote adult dentist or an endodontist. It doesn't matter what your profession is. You've applied some principles in your business. And some of the things you talked about was how you managed your cash, how you leveraged your own cash flow to expand. You didn't get into too much leveraged debt that overwhelmed you. And you started out really small with one chair and you went from this. So tell us what your philosophy was at the beginning of your practice where you did start out really small, and tell us kind of the principles you followed to expand and grow and keep your cash flow positive, but not too much leverage debt.
Well, I tell you, Tim, the first thing is I always, as a young person, I didn't have financial education, but I never liked to owe people. You know, if I would borrow money, I felt bad. I made it my business to make sure I got it back to them as quickly as possible. So dental school and federal dentistry is extremely expensive. The education is expensive. Once you get out, the equipment and supplies and things of that nature are very expensive. So I knew I would have those costs anyway. So once I finished my residency and I came back and I worked for a little bit at another office, my whole thing was I want to get out of debt. I had about $67,000 of debt at the time. It's way more expensive now, but that's another story for another time of how I kind of got that debt down beforehand. So I worked and I really wanted to get out of debt very quickly. So I worked and I worked, I worked. And for about 6 months after my residency, I was married at the time. And I said, listen, we're going to party like it's 1999. We're going to party hard. Okay. We're going to keep the loans on defer them for another 6 months. But after that point, I'm going to take every dime I make and I'm going to pay off the student loans. And I did that in 6 months. So at 6 months, I was debt free. So that allowed me to then go and be a good candidate for getting a loan for a house and also buying a building for my practice. So that's the first thing. I bought my building for my practice. I had to renovate it, and so I did it minimally. So I had to buy a few new things here and there, but instead of getting 4 rooms fully equipped, Taj Mahal type of building, I said, let me just do 1 room. And with that, they cut the cost down on how much I would spend out. And so what I did was I worked that 1 room, worked it. I had to build a clientele up anyway, worked. And then I took the cash, not another loan, I took the cash to then equip my next operatory. So that's why I mentioned before, that's what you're alluding to. And then I did that and I did the 3rd room. So I never took out any more cash or any more loans from the original time. And at the same time as I was building the practice, building the cash, reinvesting into the practice, paying the loans down, that's how it started. Then it started to snowball more and more and more. So then I eventually got to 4 operatories, but I had no more extra debt and the debt was going down and my patient volume was going up.
I love it. And did the patients even care whether you had 1 room or 4 rooms?
Tim, patients only care about 2 things. One, doctor, how much is it going to cost me? And number 2, is it going to hurt? That's it.
Right.
That's all
That's
they
it.
care about. They don't care if it's going to be Napa leather that they're sitting on, if it's going to be some, high granite countertops that they're mixing my cement on. They don't care about that. They want to know, is this going to hurt me, doc? How much is it going to cost me? And how much, if it's going to hurt, is the biggest thing. And can you do, doc, can you do what you say you're going to do? Yes. And you go in each and every day, you grind, you take care of the patients, truly take care of them. And this was a service for me. And that's another big thing too, that it's a service. It's what God has allowed me to do. So that's the big thing. Yeah.
That's so great. when a patient doesn't come in, they don't ask for your financial statements and your profit and loss statements and all that kinds of. They do, as you said, they want to know how much does it cost, is it going to hurt, and do you know what you're doing? Do I trust you?
Exactly. Okay. What did you graduate in class? What residency did you do? Or your parents? You know what? No, none of that. No.
None of that. So that's really awesome. So the reason why that strikes a nerves with us here on the podcast and those that listen to us is people always ask me, where should I invest? Now, a traditional financial advisor would probably say, oh, you should put it in this index or in this portfolio or these, this sector, or in this kind of a thing. And we always tell them, you know what? We don't really tell you where to invest. We just want you to follow some principles. And but if we do tell them where to invest and they really press us, we say the best place to invest, number one, is in yourself. It's in your knowledge and your learning and constantly becoming the best you. And number two, if you own a business, the best investment is right back into your business. And you're a living example of taking your cash flow and putting it where the best return of investment usually is, and it's right back in your practice, in your own business. And that's how it worked, correct?
Correct. So there's a little small tidbit I want to add to that. I believe investing in yourself, first of all right? So I started my practice when I was 30 years old. I'm 50 now. And I didn't save any money, quote, saving the money. I took the money that I had, put it back. I invested it back into the practice, and also I invested it back into myself. So after about a year and a half of practicing, I actually went back to school. So I went back from being a general practitioner to get my training specializing in pediatrics.
Well, interesting.
So that was a big investment back into myself, which and the reason why I went back to school is because the patients were demanding this type of service from me. So give the people what they want. This is what you want. This is what I'll give you. And so I went back to school for 2 years. Now, on that 2-year period, I was able to hire another doctor to come in, or 2 doctors to come in and work my practice, just keep things going. We had good cash flow. We had good patients already. We didn't have to speed the boat up, go this way or that way, just do this. And I went back to school from Memphis to New York. And so I was in school, owning a practice in Memphis, in school in New York. And I would come home once a month to check on things. But I'd hired doctors to be there to work the practice while I was away. So that is the sign of, that's the thing of you mentioning about investing back into yourself and back into your business. It was truly the best way. No, I did not save money and put in the stock market at that time or any other thing. I invested into my own business, into myself for 10 years.
10 years. I love that. In fact, that reminds me of one of the best books out there on how to expand your practice or your business, whatever you're doing, is a book by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy called Who, Not How. If those who are listening have never read this, and it's about the how will come later, but get really good people that you're working with. Yeah. And you did that. You were in residency in a long ways away in the Bronx in New York, and you found a couple doctors, and I'm sure you had great staff too, that correct. They kept the patients coming in and kept things going because you picked the right people to keep things running while you were studying.
And also, a business fundamental thing is creating a good system. Create a good system, have a good foundation, have standards, have rules, have regulations. And that right there, then you can just kind of, it's like a franchise. Then you can just kind of put people in and say, hey, just do this. You don't have to speed it up or go this way or whatever. Hey, just do this. No, we weren't taking the profits out of the up to the moon or anything like that. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to just continue moving, allow me to go to school for 2 years, and then come back. So I was away for 2 years and then came back. And when I came back to do pediatrics, it went steady and it just straight vertical. So that was listening to the patients and the people. So in business terms, understanding what the market wants, and giving the market what it wants.
Yeah, that's marketing 101 is understand what the people want, like
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, what happened to the two other doctors that were working for you?
So a very good question. So one guy was a young doctor who had just gotten out of school, and I hired another young doctor, and it didn't work out, and she left the office in the middle of the week. So I had to fly from New York back to Memphis, and I'd heard about this young guy who had just graduated. I met him. I told him what I could do for him. I showed him the situation. We shook hands, no contract. We shook hands, and he said, "I'll do it." And I said, "I'll do what I'm going to do." And I got on the plane and went back. On a handshake deal, that guy stayed there for 2 years. I did what I said I was going to do, and he did what he said he was going to do. But to support him, I hired a dentist who was retired. And the only thing I asked him to do was to simply, Doc, just sit here and kind of be the face. You know, if the young doctor has a question, you can answer it. If a patient comes and says, "Well, who is this young doctor here?" You just kind of stick your head in and say, you know, just kind of give him confidence. He knows what he's doing. Or if he has any questions, he can ask you. So I hired a young doctor out of school, and I hired a doctor who was retired. And that's how it works. But having good cash flow, having good relationships with lawyers and the banks, and good credit, I knew what we had to be able to take care of that, and having a system that was going to produce what we needed to do. But ultimately, we were taking care of the patients. That was the biggest thing.
Isn't that interesting that having a good system applies to just everything? I mean,
Absolutely.
who would think that a dentist, right, a pediatric doctor or dentist would be talking about systems and how effective that is, and the people you brought in, and like I said, you flew back from the Bronx, brand new dentist out of school, and because you had a system and your processes in place, you were able to explain them how it worked. You had competent staff behind that could teach them, you know, the system and the processes, and you literally flew back to Bronx, and it worked great.
The same day.
Wow.
The same day. Yeah.
That's amazing. So anybody wanting to start their business out there, especially dentists, other doctors, any kind of a practice, listen to what Dr. Miller's saying. Systems matter. Processes and systems are important.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, now, you said you wanted to talk about this later, but let's talk about it now, because this goes back into more of the maybe the personal realm of your student loans, because this is one of the things we teach is, you know, sometimes there's things such as good leverage, right? Perhaps a mortgage, the educational loans is, you know, maybe not all of it if you can help it, but tell us the details on a personal level. What was your system and your thought process of how you accelerated your student loans and your other loans when you were younger?
Okay, so when I was in school, first of all, education does matter. You know, if you can get a scholarship, get a scholarship. You know, every little bit matters. So out of high school, I got a scholarship to Tennessee State University, so I didn't have to pay for undergrad. But during that time, and this is something that you and I are going to relate together, and so will Kyle, is my first major was physical therapy.
Right.
So my first major was physical therapy, but I tried it. I didn't like it. Matter of fact, I applied. I didn't get in. So I met a gentleman who was my mentor now. Mentor is important too. That's another thing to talk about. Mentor is important. He mentored me in dentistry, and I saw this man own his own business, helping people look like me, and I was like, man, that's it. Sign me up. And after 2 or 3 days of working, this is a true story, it was like, this is it. And so I've been in dentistry ever since that time. So I changed my major in college, and I spent another year there. So I had a 1 year of college I had to pay for. When I got into dental school, I got another scholarship. And so that took off about $40,000 off the education. But this is the thing I want to talk about, is that I still live very frugally. Meaning, I stayed on the dorm my first year in dental school, professional school. I stayed in the dorm, right? You know,
Yeah.
this my second year. I stayed at home. I moved back home, and I had a one little old car that made it from home to school. It would start smoking, and then I'll park it for about 8 hours, 9 hours while at school, and then I'll get back in the car and I'll drive it back home. And when it gets home, it's smoking. So I saved money that way. My third and fourth years of school, I lived in an apartment, but the apartment was free because I worked as like an RA in a senior citizens home. So I had a free apartment. So I was thinking all the time, how can I still lower my cost of my education? Now, getting a new car or getting a nice apartment while you're in professional school, that's fine. Eating out, whatever, traveling, that's fine. I was always thinking, oh, this money's on my back. This money's on my shoulders, always. So once I finished school, went to the residency. Matter of fact, the Bronx residency they paid the most money too. So the
That
best
helps.
experience, but also they paid the most money. So I went there and I had an apartment in New York. You won't believe this. In the Bronx. This was 01 and 02. It cost me $215, but it was only a room though. It was only a room. And so I was making about $60,000 as a resident, and I had an apartment for $215. So my overhead was maybe like $500. So I partied like a rock star while I was in New York. I'm still stuck. But here's the thing. When I got back to your question, once I finished that, I had 6 more months I partied, and then every month I would take 10 grand. I don't know what I was making. I didn't care, but I spent 10 grand every month to pay off that $60,000 loan.
6 months.
6 months, and I was done. So by the age of 28, 29, I was debt free from school loans, and I had no other anything else. So now I'm working and I'm making a nice salary as a new dentist, and I'm like, wow, oh, okay, all right. That's off my shoulders. That was the biggest thing I was thinking about. That's off my shoulders. But I still kept my car. I got another car upgrade a little bit, but nothing crazy. And I just went to work. And so after that, for about 2.5 years, I worked until 2004, and I started my own practice. And I told you I bought the building. I had the money to buy the building. And also the bank said, hey, Doc, you want a house? So I bought my first house. But I bought something very small, 1,200, 1,500 square feet. That's all I needed, and went down the road. So once I was ready to go back after 2 years of practicing, I just I told you how I did in the practice of putting the money in little by little. And in 2006, I decided to go back to school because the patients were pushing me out. So I was able to sell my house before the housing crisis.
Yep.
Sell that and go back. So I didn't have that debt burden on me, while at school. So the only thing I was carrying was a small loan on the building and a practice loan to get started, which was being paid off, on time every month and beyond. So I ended up paying the building off in about 5 years, which is the other thing, which then allowed me more freedom. The building then appreciated out the roof it's just been 20 years. I'm celebrating my 20th year of practice. 2004, 2024. So it's 20 years. And that building's been paid off almost 15 years. 15 years ago.
Fantastic.
Appreciated. If real estate, any place in certain areas, it just goes under the roof. And so that has been my thing. And for 10 years, I invested back into the business from 30 to 40. At 40 is when I started saving money. I started saving money at 40. I've done
that is
10 years.
It gives me chills hearing you tell the story. There's so many nuggets in there and pearls of wisdom.
You'll have me back.
Things you could do. Oh, we'd love to. Yeah, we'll do a remote from Memphis, and you'll take me to the best place to eat there is that you know about? And then we'll do it from
Absolutely,
there. Yeah.
absolutely.
Before we leave, Dr. Miller, and we're going to ask you to provide the money maverick tip of the week. One simple tip of the week. But before we ask you that, again, being a foodie and been in New York 6 or 7 times over the years. So, what was your favorite place to eat?
Oh wow, 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 wow. I have there's so many places to eat in New York, but I have this place. It's called Blue Ribbon, and it's in the Columbus Circle area, and it's a sushi restaurant, but they serve the best fried chicken, and and the best rice, oxtail rice.
Wow.
It is right next to, Columbus Circle. Everything's very nice in this area, but this is one of my favorite restaurants there. Very small.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, I love the suggestion. Okay, well, as we wrap things up, and what I would like you to do, Dr. Miller, if you could, is this could be a general thing for everybody, but specifically for doctors or business owners in general. Somebody just starting out, either as a doctor or a new business owner, but somebody starting out that's trying to figure out how to do all these things the right way. If you were to give a simple tip, a financial tip for a brand new business owner, or a student that's about to graduate and go into school and they're not sure how to run a practice financially, or a brand new practitioner. Again, you've given us a lot of these pearls of wisdom, but what would be one maverick tip of the week to somebody can apply right now, that they can start doing right now, either as a young business owner or about to start a practice or a business? What advice would you give somebody?
Damn, that's so hard, man. It's so many things. But what comes to mind that we talked about in Las Vegas is delayed gratification. Delayed gratification. And I had a young doctor many years ago that worked with me. And I told him, I said, Doc, listen, you did 4 years in high school. You did 4 years in college. You did 4 years in dental school. I said, give us 4 years. So I would say to a young doctor, give yourself a 4-year period to learn your craft, to invest into yourself, not into the new car, maybe into the new house, but invest into your craft, what you're doing, learning your skill set, learning your clients, learning what they want, being the very best that you can be. And delay that I have to have this or have to have that. But take about 4 years once you start to really learn your craft very well. And the people that want the service. And if in any business, I'll say the same thing, out there. Learn what the customers want. Be the very best. Give them that and put money into that. Once you have that, the people will return because of what you're doing. They know what to expect. Any restaurant, they know, hey, I'm going here for the service. I'm going for the food. They don't even think twice. I'm telling you about the restaurant I'm going to. That's the best in the world, but I like the service. I like what I get. New York has, 20,000 restaurants, So that's what I would say. Delay gratification and invest into your skill set.
Wow. Just for you listening here, I did not practice this with Dr. Miller ahead of time for him to say that I'm so glad that he brought up delayed gratification, right? Because we do live in a society of instant gratification, and the opposite is so powerful. So, that's a great tip. Thank you, Dr. Miller. Well, we're going to wrap up today. Thank you for being the maverick of the week, Dr. Miller. There were so many pearls of wisdom, and thank you for your experience and sharing that with us. It's going to be, you have to be almost, not breathing to pick up some great tips from Dr. Miller this week. So I'm going to listen to it several times. But thank you for being who you are. Thank you for being not just a wonderful dentist, but just a top-notch human being. It's very obvious when I first met you that this is a good person right here. So thank you for being who you are.
Thank you so much, Tim, and I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Money Maverick podcast.